Hello, hello. Welcome. It's been a while since I've recorded a podcast, and I am incredibly excited to be back and recording again. So, thank you so much for listening. Today, we're going to be talking about soul purpose. So, if you guys don't know, I recently published my book, The Secret Messages of Birthmarks. And this book had been in the making since like 2018. I think I even started the concept in 2017. So, it had been a while. And once I hit publish on that book and it went out to Amazon, I was like, what is next? What is next? And I realized that I really needed to talk more about soul purpose because when I do readings and sessions with you guys, this is one of the main things that people come to me for. And their question is, what is my soul purpose? And the thing that kind of blew me away is that when I started my spiritual journey and my spiritual awakening, this was my question too. What is my purpose? And so I want to start by telling you my story about how I discovered my purpose. And then I want to tell you about how you can discover yours too. So several years back, I was a business advisor, business strategist for a life coaching company called Radiant Coaches. And I was invited to Nashville, essentially to experience what the business was about, experience the program so that I could help market this business. And so I flew out to Nashville for 2 weeks and I met the amazing Des Stevens, who runs Radiant Coaches Academy. And I started on a journey that I never would have expected. And this journey was my journey of self-discovery because a lot of you might know this and some of you might not, but Des was actually the person who figured out that I was medical intuitive. So during our life coaching training, Des would go around the room and she's like, okay, we're going to practice intuition. And she would point to each person. She'd say something that you feel intuitively about me. And so people would go around and say whatever, oh, you're a nice person. Oh, you like cats or things like this, right? And when it got to me, I was like, I feel something cloudy in your head, something that is disruptive and causing an illness with you. And she looked at me and she goes, yes, but see me after class. And so I was like, oh God, what did I do? Because, you go back to your days in school and when the teacher wants to see you after class, it typically means there's a problem. So I go after class and I'm like, hi, sorry if I did anything or said anything inappropriate. I'm sorry. And she's like, no, I actually think you're a medical intuitive. And I was like, okay, what's that? Because I actually had never heard of this. And I didn't know it was a thing. You know, for me, my whole life has been medical intuition and feeling illnesses in other people's bodies and not really understanding this gift very well, but just being like, hey, I get in trouble for this sometimes, and I often know what is wrong with people and why they're sick and when people are going to die. And I really have discovered recently that this is very much a part of my autism and my synesthesia, but that was that moment that I realized I was a medical intuitive. And so fast forward to later in this 2-week period, we were going to a drum circle and sweat lodge that was being run by her friend, who is now my friend Dan. And Dan is an Asinaabe medicine man. And he teaches people of all walks, all faiths, all cultures, the Asinaabe belief systems, because, he believes in the core value and belief system that the medicine people are to spread medicine to everyone, not just a certain group of people. And so we were in drum circle, and I remember distinctly because the drums were drumming and the beat started going off beat. And he stopped drumming and he goes, okay, which of you women in this room are on your cycle? And me and another girl kind of sheepishly raised our hands and we're like, me? And he's like, okay, you two, out. And he kicked us out of the room. And to say that I was offended was an understatement. I was like, what the hell? Like, we get kicked out because we're on our periods. This is crazy. So after he finished drum circle, he came out and explained, he says that the woman, when she is on her cycle, her energy is too powerful for the men to handle. And so it disrupted their drumming. And that's why he asked us to leave, not because we were weaker or a problem. In essence, we were too powerful for them. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, I can accept that. Um, and I went up to him. He was sitting at the table. I said, Dan, what is my purpose? I need to know my purpose. I've been struggling with this my whole life, trying to figure out who and what I am. And he looked at me and he goes, you know it. You know your purpose. And I was like, what the fuck? What? No, 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 no. Like, you're the medicine man. You're this great spiritual leader. You should be able to tell me what my purpose is. And he was like, no, you already know it. And I was like, no, no, I really don't know it. And he looked at me and he goes, oh, the dog, when the pup has puppies, its puppies know it will become more dogs. And the acorn, when it falls to the ground, knows that it will grow into an oak tree. And only the human forgets their purpose and who they are. And he goes, you know your purpose. And I started thinking about it. And I realized that my whole life, I had been focused on wanting to help people heal physically, mentally, spiritually. I went to school for, respiratory therapy and phlebotomy. I worked as a medical assistant. I read medical studies and medical books for funsies. Um, and I realized that my purpose was really aligned with being a healer. I studied herbalism and anything I could get my hands on. When I was 8 years old, my father taught anatomy classes in medical school. I would go sit with him in cadaver lab and watch them do dissections. Probably something that wouldn't happen today. I was a child of the 80s. They lit things like that slide back then. Nothing like that would go over at all nowadays. But I was like, no, not that purpose. I don't want that one. And I actually fought that purpose for years. I mean, even now I fight it. I'm like, I don't really want to be the healer. I'll tell you about your birthmarks and your soul purpose, and I'll tell you medical intuitive stuff. But I realized that I would tell people during their sessions, hey, this is what's wrong with you. And they're like, how do you fix it? And I'm like, well, just go see your doctor, because that's not my area. And I realized that there had to be somewhere in the middle between helping people while still not being a doctor, where I can help support people. And I'm still figuring that out. But that is my story. And this is why, back in late 2019, I got on TikTok and I started making videos, not really knowing where I was going with Spirit Fluent. I had the intention of actually creating my own social media app. And I got on TikTok to actually market and sell sweatshirts and t-shirts to fund this app so that I could build this app. And I let it slip that I had these spiritual gifts. And people were like, well, do you do sessions? And I was like, well, yeah, kind of, I guess. And I quickly threw up like a booking calendar and I was like, here you go, just book a session. And within 2 or 3 days, I was booked out for months. And I was like, what happened here? And I realized that it was me aligning to my purpose and people seeing that purpose within me. But little did I know how much over the last 5 years I would learn about soul purpose. Because there is a greater purpose that I carry. And I've talked about this on my podcast before, which is the soul purpose of the rainbow. And this is the soul purpose that I'm aligned to. And this is actually what's next for me writing a book. I'm actually just started writing a book on the soul purpose of the rainbow. But if you want to learn more about that, you can go back and listen to that old podcast episode. But I realized that, one, through this journey, that there are 7 chosen soul purposes, and people have the agency to choose their path in life. And actually, I'm going to get my little notebook out of my drawer, and I'm going to read you part of my journaling experience on how we chose our soul purpose. So this is my little spiritual journal. If you're watching the video, you can see it. If you're listening, you won't, for obvious reasons. But I remember going kind of to Spirit and asking about our existence. So I'm going to read this to you. When we chose our existence, we are all family, and we love each other greatly before we came to this earth and chose our path, our plan, our existence, even our parents. With these choices, we were allowed to pick our personality traits, character traits, flaws, life lessons, etc. This is why astrology is so important. You must be born at the exact perfect time to incarnate as you are to learn your life lessons. And within this, you are astrologically matched to your parents. So you're either going to match with your parents and you're going to get along really well and support each other, or you will be a conflicting sign. So like I have a lot of Pisces and Taurus children, but I also have a Virgo child. And so my chill nature rubs my Virgo child the wrong way, and her intense nature sometimes rubs me the wrong way. So we're here to teach people stuff, right? She's here to teach me to kind of be a little bit more organized and a little bit more planned. And I'm here to teach her to chill out a little bit. Okay, so going back to reading. We are taken to a great hall to watch our prospective lives. There are many to choose. What I was shown was this table, and it had many concentric golden circles on it. And by this table, there were witnesses. There were 3 witnesses to witness my choices. And they were a friend or a family member, a spirit guide or guardian angel, and then someone who was of authority. And they basically witnessed these life choices. And what I was told is there's many choices to choose from. We are able to spin the dial and the chances and the choices of life to obtain the perfect mix of who we are and what we are to be. These are our life choices of us choosing our life path. And these witnesses witness those choices. And then I talk about how I chose a more difficult path, that I chose to be kind, and that I didn't want to be a pushover. I wanted to be a warrior of light, but not to hurt people, but to fight for what is right. I chose a more difficult path, but because I chose a more difficult path, I had more gifts that I received to help me along that path. Not everyone is given as many spiritual gifts because there's great risk. So if you have this thing where you're like, hey, I'm a spiritual badass, I can handle everything, right? And then you get to Earth and you're like, what did I do? This is hard. Why did I choose this, right? And so we are given gifts to support a more difficult path. A typical quote unquote normal person, they're going to have a life path, life purpose shift 2, 3, maybe 4 times a lifetime. Once in childhood, maybe another time during teenage years, once during adulthood, and then maybe a last time kind of towards the end of their life, right? Now, and that's pretty typical. You know, we kind of shift and grow and shift and grow, but most people kind of are just born with like one path or maybe a couple shiftings in their path, you know. So these are the people that you're like, you know, they have fairly boring lives and nothing really happens, you know, except for a couple things that kind of do the same career for the rest of their lives. But there are others who are like, hey, get me all the lessons. Let's do all the hard things. And this is the people who have chosen the path of the rainbow and the rainbow soul purpose. So I'm not going to go too far into depth on rainbow soul purpose because we have a full episode on that. But I am going to touch on this, and I'm actually going to read from my book, and we're going to talk about what the rainbow soul is and how you know if you're a rainbow soul purpose. Okay. So the rainbow soul purpose, all rainbows are neurodivergent, but not all neurodivergent people are rainbows. Okay. They have extraordinary life stories, things that you would write a book about or make a movie about, ranging from trauma to really just interesting life stories. They tend to not fit in with social, religious, political structures. They can get along with most people, but they always feel like they don't know enough, that they need to learn more. And so we will see these people kind of being collectors of knowledge and information, learning new things, creating new hobbies, picking up new courses, getting more degrees, things like this. They are a restless soul because of this. They are prone to changing their soul purpose and path probably every 2 to 5 years. So this means every 2 to 5 years, they're like, I need to change things up. I'm feeling restless. They tend to be indecisive, but only when it has to do with how it will affect other people. So they can make choices, pretty quickly for themselves, but if it's going to affect someone else, they'll hem and haw over that, just trying to figure it out. So this is something that I think is really, really important for them. They often feel like they are friendless, and that they lack friends. So I think that's another thing, but they can access all of the soul purposes. So what are the soul purposes? There are the chosen 7 soul purposes that I mentioned in the beginning. We have the red, warrior of light. We have the orange, the alchemist. We have brown, the monk. We have yellow, the healer of light. We have green, the earth healer. We have blue, the wisdom keeper. And we have purple, which is the master healer leader types. And so these are the soul purposes that most people fit into in a lifetime. Now, there are other purposes, of course, and things kind of like subcategories and little things that kind of go off the side. But in general, this is kind of what I see when I work with people, is these 7 primary purposes, and then they are kind of mishmashed around that. So that, I think, is one of those fun things. So I want to kind of talk just briefly on what each one of these things is or does. Okay. So warrior of light, we talk about this person as a spiritual superhero. Red is a color that tends to be connected with fame. So people with red energy tend to be famous or well known. This is also colors that have red in it. So we think about orange, the alchemist, brown, the monk, and purple, the master healer leader, as also kind of having those tendencies to be fame. They have strong emotions. This is energy that is difficult to balance. So they're very high energy. We think of their polarity as growth, creating growth with themselves or the world, or creating destruction around themselves or the world. We're going to move to orange, the alchemist, changing the world through high energy movement, change, adventure, balanced, full of vitality. Their polarity is activity versus inactivity. And so this person is highly active, constantly moving and shifting. We see a lot of philanthropists with orange energy. Brown is the monk, the nurturer. This is the person that you like, if you think of like a monk in a monastery, where they're a little bit more secluded, they kind of withdraw themselves from the world. They are discovering these spiritual meanings and paths. They go within, but it is a physical space of creating this physical space of healing for themselves and others. So they kind of sit around doing their own thing and inviting others in. So they're basically creating a healing space for others. Their polarity is wisdom. I am sharing wisdom versus ignorance. So if they're sitting in ignorance, they can be stuck. If they are in their wisdom and learning, they can move forward. I'm going to jump to purple because this also carries the red. The master healer leader. These are people who possess strong healing abilities combined with strong leadership qualities. So they are destined to help others heal. These are also people like famous healers, right? There is a potential because purple has like this weird energy where they're very empathic and connecting. that they also, if too much purple is present, these people tend to be your cult leaders. So when someone comes through with like a lot of purple in their energy, I'm like, ooh, what's going on here? It doesn't mean purple is inherently bad. It just means too much. And this is really true with any of these colors. Too much, too intense can create problems. So the polarity of purple is peace versus conflict. We are going to move to blue now because purple has some blue in it. These are our wisdom keepers. These are like our empaths, like our librarians, the knowers and keepers and carriers of information. So they are basically a repository for information. And they are just kind of those people like, hey, I just have information. If you need an answer, come ask me. Their polarity is knowledge versus ignorance. And so, when we think of polarity, I want to touch on this really quick. This is a polarity of what they create, or also if they are balanced or imbalanced. So if a wisdom keeper is imbalanced and operating in their purpose and their power, they're going to have knowledge, share knowledge, and be open to receiving new knowledge. If they are not, they're going to be in a space of ignorance. They're going to be in a space of sharing, disseminating, and believing things that create more ignorance. And that kind of goes true for anybody with those soul purposes and polarities. We're going to move into green. This is my earth healers, my heart-centered healers. Anytime I do a soul purpose reading and someone comes through as a earth healer color, I also know they're a little bit skeptical. And so I'm like, oop, I got to say something that will kind of get them immediately to understand, like, oh, this girl knows what she's talking about. Because they're the type of people that are like, I'll believe it when I see it, experience, and know it with my heart. But these are also very nurturing, kind people. They're shamans, herbalists, medical professionals, midwives. They're earth healing. The other thing that's very interesting about people with green energy, and this would also include brown people because brown is really this combination color that would include those colors of green, is that they are here to typically heal ancestral or generational trauma. Um, they are also very well known, at least in the work that I do, for picking up the energy of others and carrying the energy of others. So a lot of times when someone comes in with green or brown, I'm like, who's making you sick? Who's causing you problems emotionally? Who's preventing you from moving through and using your soul purpose? Okay. And this is also true for the last color I want to talk about, which is yellow, my healers of light. Because yellows have very wide open auric fields. Their auras are more open than anyone in these soul purposes, which means that they are going to feel anything and everything from anyone and everyone around them. Social pressure, environmental pressure, emotions, they're going to pick it all up. Okay. They are creative and scientific. These are my people who have one foot in the spiritual world and one foot in the real world. So they're like, yep, I believe in science, but I also believe in the spiritual. And they can see both sides. They're very open-minded people. And so this is why when we look at them, like their polarity is expansion versus contraction. These are also my creative healers. And so when we think about creative healers, these are the authors, the poets, the musicians. We even see healers as being cooks, nail techs, hairstylists. They're basically creating a tangible experience that elicits a healing response in people. Okay. And so those are the chosen seven soul purposes. Now, when you get a rainbow soul purpose, I think you guys might know where I'm going with this. The rainbow soul purpose is the combination of all of these purposes. This is the person that has chosen that difficult path, that is walking the path of the rainbow, which means they can experience, utilize, and facilitate the abilities and knowledge and wisdom of all of those chosen seven purposes. So I come from a Christian background. If that's not your background, don't let this stop you from listening right here. This is just my best way of articulating my understanding and sharing how this works. And honestly, Christ wasn't a Christian himself and hated organized religion. So there we are. But Christ would have been a rainbow. And the way that this manifests in a person is that they can have many abilities. So he was here teaching people to walk on water. He was here as a leader teaching on the Temple Mount, the warrior of light, flipping tables and drawing swords and whips on people and yelling at people in the temple square. He was the alchemist, turning water to wine. He was the monk going into seclusion with prayer, and the wisdom keeper. So you can see how this rainbow soul purpose kind of works with someone. They pick and choose as they need to facilitate the greater purpose. And what was the greater purpose of Christ being here? He was here to teach love and acceptance. He was here to teach people they didn't need organized religion. But what he left us with, according to the Bible, and many people miss this, is he said, of these things I do, you can do and more. And he was truly here to teach us, hey, you guys can do what I'm doing. You guys can walk on water, heal the sick, raise the dead, turn water to wine. And we miss that. A lot of us miss that because the Christian religion was monopolized and utilized to control people. And there we are, from a Christian. So moving on away from religion, because, hot topics. That's the rainbow soul purpose. And so right now, like when I do all my sessions, I see a lot of rainbow people coming in. What's my purpose? And I'm like, well, if you're a rainbow, it's everything, right? And the answer is, where are you now, right? What are you shifting to? What are you experiencing? I am shifting more from the yellow energy that I've been sitting in for the past 4 or 5 years to a green energy right now. And that green energy is more of that healer's energy, that medicine person energy, that herbalist energy. And so my focus is more about, how can I help people heal, right? How can I show people their purpose so that they can heal physically, spiritually, emotionally? And so a rainbow is going to shift and change. But many rainbows are being born or awoken right now to facilitate this great change in the world, because we are shifting from this toxic masculine controls world that's been in charge for thousands of years to the divine feminine. And as this pendulum swings, the rainbows come forth to facilitate the change, to be the leaders, to be the teachers, to be the change makers. And so if a rainbow soul purpose resonated with you, you're a multi-prismatic spiritual being. You're not here for one thing, you're here for many. And so don't pigeonhole yourself into one thing. Make it many beautiful things. Allow yourself to learn, grow, and discover. But most importantly, the most important thing you can do is be yourself. Because rainbows are not meant to bring forward what already exists in the world. They're here to understand the world and then disseminate new information, to teach new things. And so if you've been wondering what your soul purpose is, maybe you're a rainbow, or maybe you're a healer of light, or a warrior, or a wisdom keeper. Maybe you're all things. But take the time to understand and discover who you are, and you will understand and discover what the path is that you are meant to walk. And so, my spiritual humans, thank you so much for listening or watching. And don't forget, my book, The Secret Messages of Birthmarks, is available now. You can listen to it on Amazon, where we have Kindle Unlimited. If you have that, it's free. Or you can purchase a physical copy of the book from Amazon. And eventually we will be in all other places that you buy or listen or experience books. So thank you, my spiritual humans, for listening. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Goodbye.